Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Thursday, July 27th, 2023. It is about 10:44 a.m. California time here, and taking a look at the latest activity on the globe still shows a significant earthquake swarm kicking up into the Gulf down here, just into the Honduras region. Now, the USGS not showing a lot because it needs to be above a certain magnitude level, but here in the Gulf of Fonseca area, that's where we're having this significant earthquake swarm. It's probably about day number 2 here, at least, of this type of activity. Right now, we still see, it looks like a 2.9 coming in to that same area. There's definitely some concern here in terms of whether this is volcanic activity or maybe plate stress or a combination of both here. This here is the latest information here from the EMSC. That's the European model showing some earthquake activity down here. Let me go ahead and zoom in and show you guys this activity that's still continuing. Now, this isn't showing all the earthquakes here on the map. I'm not for sure what's going on, but when you type in last week, it doesn't really add anything on there. So this looks like it's just in the last 24 hours. There's the last hour of activity there in the Gulf. Again, this is just right around the region that has a bunch of volcanoes here. Let me bring up this map that I found here on the Wikipedia article here. Here's a satellite image. You can see quite a few volcanoes here across in and around the Gulf area. A couple over here. Here's one obviously within that region, and a very active hotspot here for volcanic activity. That's why I'm not ruling out the potential that this could be volcanic in nature, or, you know, like I say, a combination of both plate stress and volcanic activity stirring up down here. Most of the magnitudes are roughly, at least according to the EMSC, roughly about 4 to 5 kilometers or so within this area. Now, we are noticing a little bit of a pattern in this type of deal, stretching out a certain distance. I don't know if there's a legend here on this map or not. Doesn't look like it. Here's the at least the city view. Give you a good indicator where this activity is occurring. Now, if this was strictly volcanic, and again, I'm not ruling out, there's definitely some type of pattern going on down here. Timothy noticed that last night. Appreciate the email on that. But also, we're noticing a pattern from the surface levels here, kind of back building over along this way. Now, obviously, there's some volcanoes in this area as well. This is definitely a hard one to figure out, as far as it being leading up to something volcanic or something bigger coming at the Middle America Trench region as far as earthquake activity goes. Due to this type of feature here, and getting a little migration here, even away from this swarm, a little bit further inland, all relatively shallow, leads me to believe that this area upstream here is a little bit more stressed in terms of plate tectonics here. But again, I'm kind of leaning more towards this as just generally plate stress here across the area of the Middle America Trench. And again, this could just be as bad, because this could spell some trouble for a larger earthquake upstream or within this general area here real soon. Now, there is quite a few volcanoes in this area of the Gulf region. A couple of them. Here's one at least located within pretty close to the earthquake swarm. We've seen it on the satellite view. I think it's the most prominent one as far as it being a visually active, or not active, but visually recognizable volcano. Notice that right here. Beautiful image. And this volcano looks like this popped back in, let's see, the last eruption of the volcano was back in 1959, but periods of unrest have occurred in recent years, and in 1835 it produced the largest known historic eruption there in Nicaragua. There's quite a few other volcanoes around there. It looks like maybe there had been some bigger ones as well, which ultimately collapsed about 10,000 years or so ago. Here's the earthquake activity occurring roughly about 17 kilometers within it. within this specific volcano. And let me go back here. Where'd it go? Get rid of this. There's a little bit of information, obviously, on the Gulf of Fonseca. Talks a little bit about the history on it, physical geography, the temperatures and whatnot. Not a whole lot of volcanic mentioned here in this article on Wikipedia, but obviously there is. It's it's a hot spot there along the Middle American Trench of volcanoes. It's a subduction zone, right? Similar to what you see into the Pacific Northwest, the Cascadia subduction zone. So definitely going to keep an eye on that with all this movement taking place. But again, that earthquake activity is occurring roughly, let's zoom in a little bit more here so you guys can see away from this volcano. I think, is there a satellite map here, aerial map? I guess an aerial map will work a little bit better, right? There we go. So that swarm's occurring a little bit further away from here, not specifically around this one. Maybe there's potentially some underwater volcanoes here as well. Let's see. Can we use the ocean? Well, I don't know if it's going to show anything down here. But yeah, so it's a little toss-up, folks, on if this is actually volcanic in nature or if this is just purely stress from the subduction zone itself. There, the Middle America Trench, which sits right here, and we have been seeing. If you notice, let's go back the last 30 days, 4.5 and above here. You'll see what's going on. We have seen quite a bit of earthquake activity upstream here from that Gulf, where we're seeing the current activity, which sits right about in here, away from this volcano here in the Gulf of Fonseca. We've seen a 6.5 upstream here, and some other smaller quakes, and of course I'm sure many more that the USGS is not reporting here that are smaller within this area. So this 6.5 activity, of course, when you think about it, adds further strain, right? If you get a little bit of movement upstream here, this is about 69 kilometers deep. I think it's ultimately creating more further strain within this region because these earthquakes here are shallower than this activity prior this month here. Well, it was about mid-month when this kicked up. So that's kind of why I'm leaning more towards the plate stress side compared to volcanic, considering this activity earlier this month. And then also the migration of activity that we're seeing upstream and away from this this area. But we'll definitely keep an eye on it. That's a lot of earthquake activity, and it does have somewhat of a pattern. But a lot of times, the pattern will follow where the stress is either building upstream or potentially downstream within this area. So we'll continue to watch it. Just a lot of earthquake activity. There is a 2.5 within the last 10 minutes coming in there. Unfortunately, I couldn't pull up a seismograph station specifically in that area. I may try to look for it again, but I did find a station there in Mexico just up the road a little bit. Looks like this station right here, but that's not picking up any of the smaller quakes. So I'll keep looking around here, see if I can't add it. It just takes me a little while to go through all the lists of world agencies here. There's hundreds here on this network that I can add onto the live seismograph viewer, and there's a lot. I haven't gone through every single one yet, so I'll try to do that today so we can look at more of the activity, a little bit closer look at the activity of what's occurring here. There's not a whole lot of news on this at all. You do a quick search of this area in terms of earthquake swarming, and there's not a whole lot. Of course, my video pops up and whatnot there on Google, but something's brewing, I think. Whether that be a larger quake here within the region soon, or potentially volcanic activity. Again, I'm kind of leaning more towards the first, as far as it being plate stress, but we'll continue to watch that. And, of course, report back on that if anything changes. But the earthquake swarm is definitely going on full swing today as well. USGS not reporting anything, but remember, it's only going to be roughly about 4.0 and above for the international community when it comes to the USGS. Sometimes they'll throw in like a 2 in France, which is weird. But so that's why the EMSC is included here on the globe, along with the USGS, and a combination of data from both of those two agencies. What else do we have here? Anything else changing? We were watching a little swarm out here across the Vanuatu area. Let's see what the USGS is reporting here. We did see, it looks like a couple more after midnight within the Vanuatu region, along with some further adjustment. It's been about 2 days of this type of activity here. Deeper movement around the Fiji area, that followed up by surface earthquake activity around Vanuatu, and that's very typical here across this horseshoe of a plate boundary. The general plate movement here is towards the northwest across this area, so it will follow the strain pattern across the plate boundary. Deeper movement followed up by surface, back building, and whatnot. Once those areas, find an adjustment, then we could start seeing that activity further work its way across the Indonesia region. There is a little quiet spell right now across Papua New Guinea. That could be a little area to watch. Still seeing low clusters, slight clusters here across Philippines and Indonesia Islands area. Nothing going on here across the Java Trench. Up here across Japan, looks like they did have a 5.4 here into the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench. After some deeper movement here yesterday, notice at 4.8 and 4.6 here. Deep earthquake activity into the subduction zones here of the Izu Trench, Japan Trench. Looks like that's adding a little bit of further strain upstream here along the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench. That's going to be this lengthy area right here. That's, again, I keep saying it, I think it's primed for some very large movement. But for now, 5.3 on the southern end, about 84 kilometers deep. Let's see, and that's about it far as the rest of this plate boundary goes, or across the Himalayas. Minimal movement across Turkey, just some 2s and 3s it looks like. A little bit of activity across Spain area, out into the Atlantic. A little bit of movement across the Azores, nothing big going on there. South America, some 3s and 2s, even a couple 4s in there overnight. The big island of Hawaii, it looks like one earthquake here in the last hour just off the north coast, 32 kilometers deep. That has a lot to do with the weight of the Hawaii Islands here on the Pacific Plate. That's don't believe that's volcanic, but a little bit of movement across the volcanoes down here, across Kilauea Volcano, but we're not noticing any uptick there in the volcano itself. But we'll continue to watch that, getting some deeper movement quakes here across the southern edge of the Kilauea area. That could be an indicator of potentially some magma on the move, maybe recharging the system there. Also an earthquake way offshore here near, way off the coast of Captain Cook, Hawaii, 3.1, 39 kilometers deep. And that, again, has a lot to do with the weight of the islands out here on the Pacific Plate. Alaska area, mostly smaller microquake movement, not seeing anything major or unusual up there for now. Pacific Northwest, roughly about the same as last night. A couple scattered earthquakes across the Cascades. This activity there near the Clear Lake volcanic field is just some hydrothermal operations there. They have a bunch of these plants that, not for sure what's going on here, that have a whole process of creating energy. There's quite a few of these plants. Got to zoom in a little bit closer to see them, but and then sometimes you can see the steam here from that whole process, like right here, being created at one of those facilities. So that's what's going on there with that earthquake swarm. It's very common. The whole process involves earthquakes as well, man-made. Long Valley supervolcano, little small earthquake activity there from yesterday. Doesn't look like anything today so far. Southern California, generally quiet. The 2.5 map and above only shows a handful of earthquakes there. One across the pinnacles there on the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. And as you can see, not a whole lot as far as 2.5 and above goes. A little bit of movement up here outside of Salt Lake City, up against the mountain range here, it looks like, outside of Midway. near Woodland, Utah. A couple small earthquakes there, about 10 to 14 kilometers deep. Thank you very much. And Yellowstone, not a whole lot going on, but let's just double check that and see what we have here across Yellowstone National Park. Sometimes we get swarms and they just don't report them. Not really seeing any swarms at all. As far as earthquake activity goes, there's not a whole lot of that at all. No small, maybe a couple small spikes here, but that's about it. Nothing big going on. In the rest of the country, aside from Texas there, which looks like the majority of this from yesterday out there in the oil fields, is quiet out there in the eastern portion of the country. Puerto Rico area getting some further movement here up against the Puerto Rico Trench. We'll watch that because a lot of what's going on here across the Middle America Trench affects the Caribbean plate here. You get that subduction zone adding further strain within this little bitty plate that's already getting squeezed from the south and areas of the divergent boundaries from the east. So a lot that goes on here has an effect across the Caribbean plate. But we'll continue to watch that and report back on it. There's another 3.0 coming in. These are just like earthquakes every minute here across the Gulf down there near the Honduras area. Kind of sits in between the El Salvador, Honduras, and the Nicaragua area. But there's like I say, there's a bunch of volcanoes down here. Again, I guess we'll see how this plays out, as far as if we're looking at major scale movement taking place, or if this is a sign of some type of imminent larger volcanic eruption across this area. I'm not really seeing anything on the volcano discovery site here. They always post stuff about volcano news and whatnot. There's obviously volcanoes erupting. Here's the current erupting volcanoes. They're on the map. We've got Fuego and some other volcanoes further down south. But we'll continue to watch that and report back on that, folks. Should be rather interesting to see how that plays out. Space weather activity here. We do have, we have a couple new sunspots to welcome on the visible disk. That's from last night. Today is right here. Notice this one smaller feature. Well, it was small. It's continuing to grow and get complex. Here's the sunspot regions here on the southeastern limb that we're waiting for, and also the northeastern limb of the sun. We got a 2.8 Northern California right now. Hold on a second here. Not seeing it show up on Petrolia. I just got a notification. Lake Almanor up here near Prattville, very small earthquake. But this one's pretty shallow as well. We've been seeing a swarm of movement here over the last month or so. But 2.8 coming in right now to the Lake Almanor area. Back to the space weather activity. I guess I removed that page. And go back here and check out these magnetic structures on them. Sunspot regions, it's hard to tell exactly if these are going to be majorly active in the coming days or not. They don't look all that impressive, but again, not a complete view of the sunspot areas, but we'll wait for that. Maybe tonight we'll get a little bit better picture. As far as the active regions here across the visible disk, Earth side, potentially down here, and then that's maybe this other area right here, but it doesn't look like we're looking at any major solar flare threats right now. We did see some C flare activity, little M flare activity yesterday or late last night, but we're crackling with some C flares currently as we speak. A look at the UV filter array here of the sun shows the northwestern area fairly active, but that's going to be heading out of here, and we're left with these eastern limb sunspots that are going to be coming around the bend. And like I say, they look somewhat active, but we'll wait for the a little bit better picture of the magnetograms once they come out later tonight. M flare activity around 35%, X flare around 5%, C flare activity around 99% chance. No major forecasted aurora events coming up for now. And far as weather activity goes today, looks like for the most part severe weather potential, with a 2% chance here across areas of New York, and 5% over here around New Hampshire area as well. So if you're over there, keep your eyes on the sky. Wind event as well, potentially up there across Minneapolis area, outside of Green Bay as well. A lot of it there in Minnesota. That's for some hail events. It looks fairly likely that we're going to see some severe weather in terms of that department later today. Wind as well from these thunderstorms, so just a heads up for the Minnesota and Wisconsin area. California, not a whole lot going on out here in California. Another dry one. It's supposed to be about 95 degrees today, so that's not too bad for me. I can deal with that. Definitely can deal with that. All right, hope everyone has a good day. Again, stay safe out there. We'll keep an eye on this area. I think, I think it requires some watching. That's for sure, because that's just a lot of earthquake activity. And this is the last 24 hours. If I were to bring back, well, the bad thing is about the EMSC model on here is that they only report the last 100 earthquakes. So you could have 100 earthquakes here in this swarm, and it wouldn't show anything else on the globe because it's all focused on this swarm that's taken place. So it's limited to the amount of earthquakes that it will show here in this swarm. Even if I were to go way back here, it doesn't add too much more onto the list. These are going to be reported by the USGS. But the smaller quakes and worldwide smaller quake activity, it's limited. So we really can't see exactly 100% how many earthquakes have shown up there in the last couple days there across that Gulf area on the earthquake 3D globe. But we'll check that out a little bit later tonight on some different maps. 3.7 coming in right now off the coast of Chile. Looks like about 33 kilometers deep. All right, folks, stay safe out there. And just going to have this globe tilted slightly, a little bit more so than normal, just to keep an eye on all this activity ramping up here across the Honduras region, along the Middle America Trench, at least the southern end here. Stay safe out there. And, of course, if anything major happens, we'll jump back on and provide some updates out here. Have a good one. Enjoy your Thursday, and we'll catch you guys back here later tonight. Peace out.